Alright, welcome back to Shooting It Straight with me, Antonius, and to my series entitled All About Glocks. I have come up with what I believe to be the 10 most common issues or stoppages encountered by Glock owners. Now this comes from what I have seen over the course of my police career as a state certified police firearms instructor and as a certified trained chief weapons armor for my police agency. And we were issued Glocks for the most part of my 25-year career. Now, although we're talking about Glocks here, the majority of these troubleshooting issues will generally apply to all other semi-autos as well. So they're not necessarily exclusive to just Glocks. Now I'm going to label this as diagnosis and troubleshooting, and I'm going to divide it into two videos in order to keep it simple and short, because there's a lot of information here. Alright, so let's get started with the first 5 right now. Failure to fire. Alright, you pull the trigger and no bang. Okay, well, what could it be? Well, it could be a defective cartridge or primer. The primer may be defective. Maybe the primer is seated improperly. That does happen from time to time. Or migrating oil from over lubrication can also contaminate the primer compound. Or the slide is just out of battery. Okay, now that's a common safety feature of semi-automatics. The breech must be completely locked solid in order for this gun to safely fire. If your pistol does not fire, or actually if it does fire when it's even if it's just slightly out of battery, return it to the manufacturer because there's a defect somewhere. Alright, now let's look further into that slide out of battery problem. Alright, generally it's failing to return to battery. Okay, it might just be back like that. Okay, now that can be caused by either heavy fouling in general. It could be caused from a weak recoil spring. It could be from underpowered ammo. It could be from heavy fouling inside the walls of the chamber here. That's why I said in an earlier video you have to scrub that chamber out. Scrub it out. Not just wipe it out. Scrub it out. Generally, a simple bump on the rear of the slide can push it back into complete battery for a short-term emergency fix. That's just short-term emergency. You want to get in there and find out exactly what's causing that problem before you go any further, if you can. Alright, now let's take a look at a failure to feed. Alright, it could be that your magazine is not fully seated. Now a lot of people think, well, if it doesn't click, and if it's not fully seated, it'll just drop out. Well, no, they won't. Not all the time. Many will, but not all of them. Particularly Glocks or polymer frame guns, and especially magazines that are polymer coated, because that polymer gives as you squeeze it, and you're squeezing onto that. If that magazine is not perfectly seated, that gun is not going to fire. It's not going to go into battery. It's not going to pick up a round like it should. There again, it could be underpowered ammo. It could be weak magazine springs. It could be damaged feed lips. And it could be heavily fouled chamber walls. And also, and this goes back to the failure to go into battery, it could be a weak recoil spring. It could be a tight extractor. Maybe your extractor is in there too tight, and that can happen, and I'll tell you how it can happen shortly. Or just from a weak grip in general. That causes weak grips, and improper grips cause a lot of serious problems. Alright, now we're going to look at failure to eject. Okay, this is where it fails to fully throw out the brass case. It fails to throw it completely out of the ejection port like it's designed to do. Now, that could be that could be a broken, bent, or damaged ejector. This is the ejector. This is what throws it out. It could be a weak grip, and again, it could be underpowered ammo. Alright, now we're going to look at failure to extract. We looked at failure to eject. That's one thing. Now we're looking at failure to extract. That's a different thing. This is where the brass fails to exit the chamber. Okay, it's not being pulled out of the chamber like it's supposed to be pulled out of by your extractor. That claw or something is not getting up under that rim and pulling it out of that chamber like it's supposed to. Now that could be due to the extractor could be worn or chipped. You could have heavy fouling or debris under the claw portion of that extractor, the claw that goes into that recession here at the rim. It could be under or overpowered ammo, and it could be heavily fouled chamber walls again. And guess what else? Right, a weak grip. Alright, now we're going to talk about the slide failing to lock back on the last shot. You know, they're designed to lock back when it runs empty, and that's for several reasons. Primarily to let you know that it's empty so that you can reload and continue. Now, by far, the most common cause of this is due to using an improper grip, and most typically the thumb's forward grip method is what causes that, because it causes interference with the slide stop lever. But aside from that, other causes may include damaged magazine follower, a heavily fouled magazine in general. Maybe you dropped it in sand or mud or just haven't cleaned it in 8 years. It could be a weak magazine spring. The slide stop lever itself is either weak or positioned incorrectly. Or the pistol itself is heavily fouled. Here's another thing too. The trigger pin may be inserted too far to the left here. Alright, if it's too far, if you pushed it over too far to the left, it can bind the slide stop lever spring. Okay, that pin can bind on this spring or bind right in here where that hole is, pivot hole. It could bind that right in there. Okay. If the slide stop does not move freely, then press the trigger pin slightly to the right, a little bit more, until it frees up. Okay. And again, improper grip technique. It can cause the thumbs to rest on top of that slide stop and depress it, push it down during shooting, and if you do that, it's not going to lock back, and you're not going to know it's empty. You'll be trying to pull a dead trigger, and nothing's going to be happening. Now, conversely, if your slide locks back prematurely, say after 2 or 3 rounds, the slide stop lever spring may be in the wrong position. Okay, reversing the tension. Maybe that locking block pin is underneath it instead of on top of it like it's supposed to be. That's why it's important to get that right if you change this out or take this out. You have to install it correctly. Or your thumb, again, with an improper grip, your thumb may be pushing up on the slide stop lever, which comes from that improper grip, because your thumbs are on it. Your thumbs are supposed to stay away from all the controls. A weak grip can also produce this problem. So now, as you can clearly see, so far the vast majority of these issues that we just discussed stem directly from user error and a failure to clean, which I consider to be a user error as well. Now, will it be the main cause in the remaining issues? Well, watch and see. So, listen, I hope I was able to pass on some useful information to you. Thanks for watching. I'm Antonius, and I'll be shooting it straight in part 2. Ciao.